I want to dedicate a video to my most favorite franchise of all time that shaped me and molded me creatively. Evil Dead. The Evil Dead franchise has been the catalyst for everything in my creative life. From its filmmaking, storytelling, everything has had a significant impact on me. I'm pretty sure I've told this story before in a previous video. When I was 5 and still an only child, I had younger uncles who watched over me, basically akin to older brothers you could say, who would scare me with this movie for misbehaving. And let me tell you, 5-year-old me thought Henrietta was the scariest thing ever. Not only did it scare me halfway to hell as a kid, but it creatively ingrained itself into my being and inspired me. To 5-year-old Anthony, all the Deadites and their distorted voices were scary and fear-inducing as it was for the character of Ash. But once that chainsaw arm comes on and he blows the dust off the boomstick and says, "Groovy," 5-year-old Anthony is ready to take on the monsters at Ash's side and is no longer cowering behind the couch. I don't know where I would be today without this franchise. Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell have been my greatest creative influences ever since I was a kid, with Evil Dead and Spider-Man. I mean, other things have creatively influenced me, don't get me wrong, but my love for storytelling and filmmaking all goes back to Evil Dead. The oldest sketchbook I have from my childhood is from 2007, where you can see my sketch of Ash Williams and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I've even made comics out of the Evil Dead trilogy and imaginary fan sequels with my own headcanon of how the games connect to the movies. Evil Dead 4, Hail to the King, Evil Dead 5, Regeneration, Evil Dead 6, Evil Dead 7, Evil Dead 8. One of my very first videos I ever edited and uploaded onto YouTube was an Evil Dead fan film I made in the backwoods of my school. My first ever cosplay for my first convention was Ash Williams. I even have a framed photo of Ash signed by Bruce Campbell. Need I say more? But if I can pinpoint the precise moment of when the franchise affected me creatively, I'd say it was the very first time I watched Army of Darkness, the director's cut. That ending with Ash taking more than 6 drops and sleeping too long fucked me up royally. Most movies I've watched around that time always had a somewhat peaceful resolution. Game of Death, Billy Lowe gets revenge on everyone who tried to kill him. Rambo First Blood Part 2, Rambo defeats the bad guys, but walks away with his freedom. Wallace and Gromit, all those shorts usually always have happy endings. Night of the Living Dead, a lot of people died, but Barbara survived it all. Mr. Bean the movie, Mr. Bean did screw up, but he fixed the painting in such a Metal Gear way, and finally got along with the family. The director's cut ending to Army of Darkness was my first introduction to the concept of a cliffhanger. My uncle, who had just started college at the time, would stay over at my house to study, and since we'd always watch Army of Darkness every time he came over, I would constantly ask him, "What happened to Ash? Did he live? Did he die?" And he'd always make up some story about Ash finding civilization and fighting evil again. Who would have thought that some oral storytelling to put a kid at ease would mentally shape him into this imaginative and curious creator that you hear speaking to you now on this very microphone? Life is crazy sometimes. About 2 to 3 years later, my uncle and I went to a local pawn shop and I bought a VHS copy of Army of Darkness. The shop was about to close down due to the weather conditions around that time, and one of the workers was nice enough to let us have it for free. Never questioned it, but it felt like a really generous gesture from the worker. At this point, I already knew how everything began, proceeded, and ended in Army of Darkness. So when the theatrical ending in S-Mart played, I was bamboozled. I mean, who would have thought he'd go back to his own time, fight evil for one last time, and get the girl? Man, this is heavy. Mind you, this was around 2006 to 2007. I was only 7, and I had not even interacted with the internet space yet. It felt like the universe heard my worries and manifested an alternate ending of Army of Darkness for me in the form of a VHS tape. The theatrical ending was nice and reassuring, but the damage of the director's cut had already been done. I was already too creatively far gone. Years would eventually go by, and talks of an Evil Dead 4 swirled around. I was becoming a fan of other things, and becoming obsessed with storytelling. I still loved the franchise, but I wasn't all too crazy about it. If Evil Dead 4 happened, I would welcome it with open arms. If it didn't, then whatever. Then the remake was announced. I wasn't against the remake not having Ash. As long as there was an Ash-like character wielding a chainsaw or boomstick, I was definitely down. It would be the very first time I saw the franchise in a theater. The theater experience was amazing, and I'll never forget it. Especially with how a majority of the effects were practical, and how they used so much fake blood during production. It was nice to see something Evil Dead related again, but I was willing to pass on Ash returning in favor of Mia taking the lead. But we still haven't gotten the sequel to it yet. Another few years later, Ash vs. Evil Dead is announced, and I'm a fanboy all over again. Season 1 was a nice return to formula, but the ending made me feel like all the build-up to Ash as the hero, aka El Jefe, was kind of a middle finger to the face. I wanted to see Ash grow as a character and not be a fuck-up, but I guess it makes more sense for him to learn to be selfless while the world is taken over, so I guess that's some character development. Season 2 gave Ash a much needed backstory and concluded with him being a hero. Season 3 laid the grounds for some world building within the Evil Dead universe, and having Ash accept his destiny as the chosen one again, but sadly, we will not see where his journey continues since Starz canceled the show. As a lifelong fan of Evil Dead, Season 3's finale did not anger me, did not sadden me, nor did it leave me wanting more answers to questions that'll never be answered. But that's also where I learned that that's just life. You don't get all the answers. In a way, it's kind of like me being able to come to terms with the cliffhanger ending that affected me all those years ago. As for the character of Ash, he's like the Doomslayer. His fight is forever continuous, and in my head, it's nice to know that the hero I grew up idolizing, the hero who began his journey in fear and grew braver from it, is still continuing the fight. He's not dead, he's not helplessly trapped in a ruined timeline. I mean, he kind of is, but the difference is that he's still in the fight. He's literally become the Mad Max of horror, and to just know that he's no longer helpless, but armed and ready with an android babe at his side, Season 3's ending is a much more hopeful conclusion. I will admit now, looking back at it in retrospect, Ash Williams is probably the oddest and weirdest hero to grow up idolizing. He's cowardly, selfish, and kind of an idiot, but I guess that's what makes him so relatable. Ash is the audience surrogate in a horror movie. In a world of final girls and horror, Ash is the final guy. Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, Robert Tappert, and too many names to say that brought this franchise to life and scared a 4-year-old Asian American boy into being creative, being imaginative, and being brave in all his endeavors. Thank you so much. Stay groovy.